Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome back to Turn Down for What. Another day,
Another megawatt charged episode.
another electrified episode. I think we should just start today by talking again about Donut Labs, because every time we talk about Donut Labs, we just get all the views because everybody wants to hop in the chat and call it a scam. So,
Inundated.
The podcast is going to be about, megawatt charging and Tesla, but, really we need to talk about Donut Labs because apparently that's what everybody wants to talk about. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on Donut Labs? I'm just kidding.
Clearly, I like the donuts, whether in a lab form or any other. Oh,
This is
man.
fair.
Well, you did say something. Where did you say they have the displayed right now?
Yeah, so, Verge Motorcycle, which is who uses the Donut Lab motors and battery, and has their 2026 new model motorcycle on display here in San Jose. And they have the new 26 model of the Donut battery and motor, in theory, that's in this motorcycle. Now, the motor is visibly smaller and more compact, and you can see it. It's there. You cannot tell if the battery is in this thing. And they did like a ride and drive event here in the Bay Area with their customers. And so I would love to see this new bike. I'd love to see it charge. I would love to see it drive. The bike is there with the chassis. Is the battery in it? Probably not. But the frame is there and everything's sitting there, and they're clearly ramping up for a launch, and they're going to do a launch event in Southern California in March. So they are
be legit to have a actual solid state bike, whether it's experimental, whether it's like super reliable. I don't care. Like, it's just
Solid
cool.
state anything. That's all that's all I care about. Something solid state would be great.
Yeah, I mean, they are
That's not the
certainly
topic for today. I was fishing because that's just what's been so popular recently to talk about. And
Well, there is a
two
topic
episodes on it, and they've been like two of our best ever podcast episodes. So
there is a tie. So our company that we use our charging stations from is a Finnish company. Just so happens that's what today's episode is. We were in Sweden, right next door to Finland. And so when you look at Donut Motor or Donut Lab, I think it is what they have. They are a Finnish company. So they're in that same area that we're going to be talking about today. And it does show that there is a big interest of that entire region in battery storage and battery technology and probably one of the more advanced areas when it comes to this type of technology. So there is a very good relationship there. The fact that they're coming from the same region of our partners, if I'm not incorrect in that and where they're from.
They are Estonia is where they've got a big part of their manufacturing presence there. And so to keep us from always having to talk about Donut Labs, guys, we need you to go and watch some of our non-Donut Labs material. So we've also been doing some weekend work with some Watts in the News. So shout out to that, because real quickly here, as you can see, we have our Donut Labs, which has 6,000 views and almost 3,000 views. And then I did a awesome international episode of Oh Canada, which dropped to 151, guys. 151. Where are the thousands of you? And then that momentum spiraled into 61 about Tesla's Autopilot. So you know what? We're gonna visit that topic today, guys, because not enough of you tuned in. Only 61 of you tuned in to this Emmy-nominated performance. And so we're gonna revisit the topic later today about Tesla Autopilot, since obviously dozens of you were riveted by the topic. More to come on that.
And a lot of people care about the topic. It's just people want to tune in more to Donut Lab. So we're holding our entire audience to a higher standard. You need to watch, like, and all the stuff,
right?
All the other videos, and share the love.
The algorithm, man.
Every week. So
the algorithm is a funny thing. And so just a lesson, real quick lesson, guys, about manipulation, real quick, if you'll bear with me, because this is hilarious. I'm going to try to do this real quick. So I did a video and I tried to game the system. I'm going to share this with you because I just think this is hilarious. Oh shoot, you know what? I can't do it in time because I'm on the wrong thing. So I did I'm gonna just really quickly. I did this video on EVs are affordable, right? And I was actually shooting this video and doing the end of it. And my end was the premise of this was that, hey, you got this for a visual, right? You got this whole stadium here, and EVs only take up a small portion of the market. And there's this whole empty seat area of the marketplace that EVs still aren't affordable. They can't, reach it. And what's it going to take? And then I thought the batteries was still a component. We still need LFP. Well, then Donut Labs comes out, and I had to redo the ending of the video. So I went down to what we talked about a minute ago, Verge, and reshot the ending. And then I did a video about Verge, and like we talked about, it crushes, right? Crushes for my, channel, 11,000 views. And then I throw the new ending onto this video, which only gets 1,000 views. But when I go and look at those 1,000 views, the very end where the Verge section is about Donut Labs, everybody skipped to that section and didn't watch the part that's got like NVIDIA and Ford and all the other parts about, as I'm going around Levi Stadium and showing different things, right? Awesome video, but Donut Labs was the topic. And when you look at the chart, which I can't show here because you'd have to go into the, the analytics. Yeah, hilarious stuff. Everybody jumped you see the spike of the audience jump at the Donut Labs part.
So if you're watching our video, at some point in the middle of the conversation, we might just be like, Donut Labs! And then
see
just
it
like
spike.
go back on topic.
Yep, see that.
And that way we're just
go
triggering the system to recognize that the whole episode's about Donut Labs, even though we're talking about Autopilot in Sweden. So
I'm just going to put a random chapter. This is the random chapter in the middle is just going to say Donut Labs.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what this chapter will be. This chapter will be named Donut Labs.
Yeah, and every episode from here on forward will have a chapter of the episode called Donut Labs. So
hilarious.
Anyway, we've talked enough and given enough spotlight to Donut Labs, and we will get on topic. Our team, aka the wonderful Jessie Hensley, had the privilege of touring, as he kind of gave a preliminary overview of. He got to take the long, arduous journey over to Sweden. He had to drive from East Tennessee to Raleigh, fly to Atlanta, fly to London, fly to Sweden. It was a long trip for like a 2-day blitz in Europe of this megawatt trucking event, then to fly all the way back to East Tennessee. I think you said it was like 40 hours of travel to get to the point of attending this one-day event.
Yeah, I think it's out of the whole deal is 96 hours that I spent, and 51 of it was traveling, and 45 of it included sleeping and being at the events. So very little sleep, very little
sleep,
time.
Yeah.
But definitely was an experience to see the first publicly available megawatt charge in Sweden. Obviously, that was in Norrköping, which is a beautiful town on the southern part of the country. Obviously, we spent a day in Stockholm, and when you're in Stockholm, I've always, as a history person, wanted to see the Vasa, and was able to go see that ship, beautiful city. Didn't see as many chargers as I originally thought there would be. I would expect public charging, but there's a lot of people that do transit through the bus system and through the tram systems. They just didn't have a lot of vehicles downtown, except people like us that were coming in and out. Still a lot of traffic, but not a lot of parking that you could do that in. The other thing that was
about the ship, bro. I need to know more about the ship.
You mean the 1620s flagship of Sweden that went down on its maiden voyage? It was there's 98% of that is the original wood of the ship, and this was a flagship. This would be like losing an aircraft carrier. It was the biggest part of their fleet. it's amazing to
This was the
see.
Titanic of however many years ago.
No, it wasn't the Titanic. There were bigger ships, but I've seen Ironsides here. Our ship we had, it was a much bigger ship than I was expecting for that time, the 1600s. Especially you see all the doors open down the side when you saw, 420, 430 people was used to run this ship. So you have a huge amount of people that was on there. And you had to have the water, food, resources. They had to sail, the actual sails. They were able to save those, and they put them in a material and put them up on the walls. It just gives you a glimpse into what was. And this ship sank in brackish water, combination of salt water and fresh water. And then because of the temperature and that type of water, it was able to save this ship. And when they brought it up, what you could see that stern part of the wood there, you had where they would dive down, and it was the Swedish teams were trying to salvage some of the parts, and they were using dive bells back in the day to get the cannons and get some of the equipment out. So they did damage trying to open up the bottom, but still, it's something that something that I knew was there. I didn't think I'd ever have the chance to experience seeing it, and that's just one part. We didn't have a lot of time. We got to do that, and then do a very little bit of shopping to get my knitted goods and services, gloves for the kids, and beanies, because I forgot a beanie, and I wanted one that was warm. So then we go here, beautiful city, another one of these cities we went to or shopping. This is where the megawatt charger is at, and the team that was there, he owned a very large trucking company, and I can't remember the name. Airfixon Transport AB. Eric was his name, that was the owner of it. Beautiful facility. Buildings are built a lot bigger there when it comes to installation. So you could tell these systems are built for staying warm. Now, the other thing that was interesting to me is they get to go 88,000 pounds, where in America we're 80,000 pounds. And I'm not going to translate that over to kilograms, but the difference there is also not only you in a very cold climate, it was getting dark at 4 o'clock, very dark at 4 o'clock every day. During the summertime, it might be 70 in that small window of time, Fahrenheit. So this area stays cold. And for them to have battery operated vehicles as their main fleet, or at least replacing a lot of their main fleet with it, not only does it show that they can pull this type of weight, but it also shows that it is something that they are embracing, are going to use on a daily basis. Obviously, there's different use cases. We've all said, hey, it ain't for everybody. There's going to be situations this doesn't work for. And I would definitely say that the same for us when it comes to the shipping industry in America. There's going to be certain roads that in that 8-hour period, you get a lot more than that time, and you don't want to have to stop for a 40-minute or 50-minute charge to get back where you need to be. But those hauls, say from Savannah, the port of Savannah to Atlanta, that's something you can make in a trip like this. Those hauls from, say, Atlanta or Memphis down to or Memphis to Atlanta to get that shipping corridor, Memphis down to New Orleans. Those are day trips that I think would be very easy to run with this type of equipment. And even though you see, as we'll show today, some of the equipment, we're looking at stub nose or cab overs, what we had in America in the 70s, early 80s. We actually had a few that we ran on our equipment when I was in the construction industry. But the guts of these trucks are the same over here. For example, Freightliner is partnered, I think, with MAN. Is that who they're with? Volvo. We have our Volvo cab trucks with Volvo was there as well. And then we had one other group there that had the highest charge, and that's the Scania. And they have their American-based companies. Now, this truck here, you can see how long this is. And not only did the rear, the actual rear cabs or the rear trailers on these trucks, even though they look like a double that we have here, they actually had steering tires that would steer with the truck and would bring it in. I got to watch one of these bring up the fifth wheel or the rear axle, bring up the trailer axles, and it was able to turn in a radius that I thought was not even possible for a pickup truck, let alone a tractor trailer. But you can kind of get an idea of the scale of these trucks as well. I mean, it's the same we have here. These are Class 8 pulling 88,000, just like we got here. So the question there becomes, is it cheaper? Is it cheaper than diesel? And in some instances, I think that if you're able to have power plants at your facility, such as a battery backup, or you have a power purchase agreement of, a low 8 cent, 9 cent, this is probably going to be a comparable to diesel. Not saying one's better than the other, but I do like the drive systems that's in these types of trucks. You do have that direct torque. And, this is just this world. Once you start getting into the Tesla Semi and that technology, that is a completely different animal. And we all know when you say, well, this is never going to happen. We always heard that with electric. Well, you had the bolt and the bolt failed or whatever. No one's saying that Tesla is not a 500-pound gorilla now. They proved not only, okay, you don't have charging stations, we'll pay for charging stations. We don't have you don't have the technology, we'll build that technology. So when I look at Tesla and these others, I think that they're going to go through and do it. And, we're going to have charging stations. So that's why it's good for our partner, Kempower. We have cabinets. They have cabinets. Those same cabinets are the ones we have. We just added that extra cabinet to what we're talking about, that extra dispenser. And through our variable system of dynamic charging, we would be able to charge not only vehicles, just like you saw there, but also these trucks when they come in. And there was more room to charge on all of these vehicles. The charge curve went straight to the top and stopped. I do have a picture of one getting 672 kilowatts delivered, and that's at 1,000 amps. I think somewhere it shows the voltage. If I remember correctly, I saw like 800 volts is what I was seeing in one of these, but that amperage level is at 1,000. And there's when I believe is on the Scania. So definitely it's a world that is coming, and I'm very happy that I was able to see it. I was able to experience it. We are talking to some groups that are interested in megawatt charging. And the other aspect of this is, when can this go to cars? We know that BYD has already been able to charge one of their vehicles. Now, you have to have a much higher voltage architecture in your vehicle. But let's assume all three of us got Lightnings, that my Lightning was dead as a doornail, and I pulled up to that charger, and it could take that amount of power. It could take the 672 kilowatts when I'm charging. That would mean from dead to 80%, I would have about 9.5 minutes of sit time. That is interesting, because now you're getting that's no time at all. Can't say that's what's going to be in 5 years or 10 years, but I know you got to have somewhere to start. And I know that with what our equipment and Kempower's equipment is, we can update and upgrade where others who have a standalone can't. And that's kind of where we've always been trying to look at something like this. And it's very interesting to see it work and see it. Even one of the more impressive parts, and I don't have this through the slides, but it was a year over year of that Volvo. And it was, here's how many people have drove on these roads. And it was a light, and it showed how many roads were lit up and how many pathways. It showed a 3-year process of just lighting up the entire European continent. And that shows that that vehicle is being used for those locations. I still don't know if it's cost parity. I still don't, I know that the maintenance is a lot better, but it's here. There's no denying that this investment in these trucks and this equipment is going to be here. And I think that's the exciting part, is I got to get a firsthand look at it. You could see the number 10 charger there in the background to the right of the Volvo, left of the man. And that is what the megawatt dispenser looks like. Our dispensers that we have are the others on the right, moving to the Scania over to the far right. And that's our traditional system. So you'll see that there will be that system potentially at one of our sites eventually. And again, it's just going to be offering that service. Not sure who's going to use it today. There's nobody I can charge today in our region. California has a big push into this. I think that Kempower has sold a lot, or at least working with groups a lot in California for this, and I got to meet some of the great teams. I think with SkyCharger that has a plant out your way. Very nice facility that they're building. So for us, it's we were there. We got to see it in action. We got to ask the questions we needed to ask, and now we're going to look forward to trying to take this technology and implementing it with our systems. Can't wait to get to ACT this year and see if I can get in one of those.
Is this standardized across the world? Where, because unlike where you've got CCS1, CCS2, NACS, is this the megawatt connector?
Yes. So I have there? So Tesla has, like they always do, their own larger square connector, and I have been told they were fighting these OEMs just like Tesla had fought the other OEMs for the CCS. I think they switched to this.
Yeah, I think they did. I think the new Tesla the new Tesla Semi now has the standardized.
Yeah.
Yes.
And not sure what that means. It might still mean that they do their own and they have their own system. And if you're selling these trucks, you could create your own pathway for those trucks. But what I'm hoping is what I've always been told and read about Tesla was they built the network they have now because they had to. And what Josh and I are looking at is, okay, if that's what you had to do, how can a private company step up and offer this service so you don't have to? So we could sell everybody's trucks if it's something they can work on. And that means you got to start out with the best equipment, the highest charge. And fortunately, we're kind of one of the few that's in that category that could potentially do it. So I do feel like if we could do that.
As far as what you saw, though, out there in that cabinet is the same cabinet you're going to have in Kentucky. And that connector is the same connector that we would have in the US.
Yep.
And that's going to be universal. So that's great for manufacturing. That's great for cost and scale and
everybody.
That's awesome, man. And that means if the Semi pulls up into, any station, it's the same stuff. And that's, for once, it sounds like we did something that is coming out the gate. Although there's, a handful of trucks that do it, but it's coming out the gate standardized. And thank goodness, because, man, we are not good at standardizing.
Yeah, and somewhere I have it right here. It is. So there is actually a CCS2 plug above the megawatt. So if you can use a megawatt, great. But if you need to, you can use a CCS as well. So again, I don't have battery specs on these trucks. That's one thing Josh was throwing rocks at me earlier today, was I didn't go through and talk about what the capabilities were, the size and things like that. From what I was able to read through the documents, you're probably looking at the phase 1 was like 300. I think phase 2 is around 600 kilowatts, 700 kilowatts. Still though, you're hitting that 700 kilowatt range. You're able to make most of the travel times between two major cities or two major ports within the United States. And I think that's going to be the big key, is how can we make this trip work with that one truck on a day trip and go back and forth. And while they're unloading, even charging while you're unloading. So the hour or so it takes to unload or load back, you could also be charging. So that gets back to, okay, do we need to have a what if in between? But now we're focusing on battery storage at these transportation hubs and looking at it that way. There's multiple ways of doing it. Nobody knows the right way yet. It's just now being done in areas like Sweden. But I do see it as something that's going to happen in the next few years, as long as it's cost effective.
Yeah, it's something that we struggle with at my 9 to 5, trying to figure out where do you slot these things in on your line hauls and what routes. And it really has to do with regulation around hours that drivers can go, and what is your dwell time and where are they going to sit, and where is the infrastructure available. And that's a different challenge out in California compared to some places. And so all that stuff is very dynamic. And if you've got megawatt charging, that's a different charge speed entirely than if you're using your CCS2 connectors. So there's so much there, right? On where these chargers are going to be and where you're going to get your power. A lot of cases, you're going to drop off your, your trailer, and your tractor is going to move on to someplace else. So it's just, there's so many different things you've got to factor in, and everybody's going to approach it differently. ACT Expo will be interesting to see what that looks like. A lot of the focuses have changed since we were there, as far as what we, for us, my company, what we're not mine, not like I own it, but a lot of the conversations that I'm hearing, you know what I mean? We've pivoted, to use a phrase that we've used before. Yeah. We've kind of pivoted away from the line hauls more towards the last mile in a lot of our stuff, right? Where we've been looking at Harbinger and Bellinger and those kind of things, because Bright Drop disappeared off the radar. And so our focus has been on that side of things, Mercedes Sprinter vans. And it hasn't been, because Tesla Semi still, despite them being a keynote at ACT Expo and thinking that by this time they'd be rolling out launches of tons of Tesla Semi, we have yet to see it. And
once again, as we've mentioned 100 times, it is this event in Sweden, I think, is just the example of the fact that the rest of the world moves forward with this technology while we're still stuck in our traditional view of how things have to be done. And Tesla can't do as much as they want to do here because there is such a resistance to the technology broadly. I was speaking to a group of EV leaders, if you will, in Kentucky, and they were like, so what do we do about all this? And I'm like, it's just a matter of thrive or die. I mean, we're going to figure it out. We've talked about this a bunch of times, but the US OEMs and the traditional US system of transportation will either evolve, or at some point they will not be able to prevent, you had that talk about, certain Chinese EVs now coming into Canada. They will find a way to get into the United States. And when they do, the US OEMs are going to have to either figure it out or they're going to die on the vine, because, as much as we've said this 100 times over, you can sit there and just say, well, we're not going to promote that. It's coming, and it's a better technology, especially if you get solid state. And there needs to be an open conversation about how we can compete in this space rather than just ignore it, because ignoring technological advancements is going to continue to leave us in the dust. And I think that there's still a lot of technological improvements happening in that space, but if we're not involved in that, then we're going to end up dying on the vine as far as the traditional system. And, if the Chinese EVs win, the Chinese EVs win. But like we talked about at the end of the last donut episode, Donut Labs, like I said in the middle of the episode, China's doing solid state now. They're getting advanced manufacturing, and they're pushing all these things forward. You even see the major companies like Toyota and some of them looking at the technology on a global scale. The United States, we're like, well, we might do this in 2047, and it's like, we have to. We'll see, but I think that we're currently in our own way, and megawatt charging is going to begin to advance across Europe because there's an actual demand and use for it in a colder climate and in an area where it doesn't make as much environmental sense as far as the temperatures and the batteries and all those things. We could make it work in the southern part of the United States 100 times better, and they're doing it. They have a model, and other countries like that are going to be an example for what that industry should be.
There are 5 Chinese companies that have, according to them, there's 5 Chinese companies right now that have a working demo solid state prototype vehicle within their fleet that they're testing and showing. So when you start looking at the advancements that's going to do for not only the safety and everything else, but also the fact that we've always been talking about this as a standpoint of usable energy. What do we use today? It turns most of that energy, or a lot of it, into heat, and we're gaining a lot more. So that efficiency is what we're talking about, using more for the same dollar. And once you start looking at, even our trucks are about double or triple. If you charge at home cost wise, I think it's like an 80 mile a gallon equivalent in cost. Now it goes up and down depending on the dollar, but I've never seen a equivalent 50 mile an hour F-150 that uses traditional systems. It ain't about, preventing some other technology. It's about not being behind. And America's always prided itself on not having be the last one to get the technology. We've always been innovative. And this, to me, this is kind of went out of the out of the car space into the technology space. And we've always been the leaders in technology. And I think that when you look at what other companies, I think that we're kind of behind. That's why, Josh and I have talked about trying to work with BYD and try to get an invite to go look at what the next rounds are, because it's going to be very important for us to kind of set our sights, because our site will be able to do all of that in the future. We're trying to build something that won't be obsolete, or you bring up, an all-in-one 150 kilowatt, but yet now we've got a megawatt down the road that'll take that car to a megawatt. Why would you ever stop at that 150? And I can remember 2 years ago, 150 was all, I was like, hey, 150s are here, not 75. This is great. So it's trying to make it to where we can always upgrade and always provide what the customer wants. And, we've had a lot of people say that that's not the right direction to go. They say, oh, you shouldn't advertise up to 400 because that's not what the industry needs. We need more of them at 150. I kind of feel differently. I feel like once batteries get bigger, if I'm pushing a 200 kilowatt battery in a Chevy Silverado, I'm going to want to be able to charge at 350 kilowatts wherever I go. And that's kind of what we're wanting to do.
Any 800 volt vehicle is going to be the tech that you're going to want the 400 kilowatt charging. And that could be a minor segue into, Chris, what you experienced with the first, one of the first true V4 cabinet setups. But it's like, the technology we were scoring from day one. We've brought this up probably 5 times. Day one, we said, we're not putting CCS only on our charging stations. And everybody was like, nah, like you guys are fine. CCS is the future. We're done. 3 weeks later, everything changed. And now everybody's like, oh yeah, NACS on every port. That makes sense. We still stand behind the fact that we feel like if you're going to do DC fast charging, you need to be considerate of all types of vehicles. And, there is use cases. I'm not saying there's not use cases for lower power charging, like 7,500, 200 kilowatt charging solutions. But the average traveler that needs a DCFC, or even the local commuter that needs DCFC, they don't want to be at a charger longer than they need to be. And if they are going to be at a charger for a long time, a high powered level 2 charger would be a great solution. But a 60 kilowatt level 3, I have never found my personal need in any of my driving experiences that a 60 kilowatt would make sense for me.
Unless we had to. Unless you had to.
There was one single time, and that was because I had to be at an event. I traveled to Nashville like 2 weeks ago. I had to be at an event for 3 hours. And so I Ubered from that 60 kilowatt crappy charger, which disconnected mid-session. Way to go, EVgo. Mid-session, it disconnected, but I left it there because I was going to leave it there for 3 hours so I could be charged in 3 hours. But like, who wants a 3 hour charge? Even in my Lightning, it was a 3 hour charge at 60 kilowatts delivered. And so it's such a random use of energy. And I understand.
It was cutting edge at the time, though. 5 years ago, probably, or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that was what you could get. There wasn't 400s. There wasn't any of this technology. Yeah. I mean, and you yelled and screamed at different people we tried to buy from, saying, look, we can't do that unless we do this, that, or the other. And, we were able to find a company that is building tomorrow's technology, which is megawatt. And then instead of making that technology cheaper and then taking the bus bars and making them smaller, they just said, we're just going to keep this stout, big, heavy infrastructure, and we're going to use that for our regular too. And that's why we're able to get what we do. But yeah, I mean, yesterday was great, but how many of these systems can be upgraded too? I don't see a lot of people saying, well, let me add another cabinet to the 60 and make a 240 or whatever. I don't see that. And this tech is that's what we were looking for. So it kind of fits a lot of what we're wanting to see in the future of development.
No, I think you guys were ahead of the, what the OEMs are starting to do now. If you look at what was announced just now by Volvo and what BMW announced with the iX3 or i3X, dyslexia there. I don't know which order those things are in. The Mercedes, all of those are coming out with 400 megawatt charging, 400 miles of range, right? It's all they are starting to release those. And you're talking about what we just experienced out here with the Tesla chargers, and it's a very similar system to Kempower, very much. So they've got, out here, we took the Silverado and tested that along with the Lightning, which did, nothing remarkable because it's a 400 volt system. But I took the Silverado and the Lightning and I tested it at, the megawatt cabinet that's out here in Redwood City. There's only 2 of these that are deployed. There's this one, and then just this past weekend, they did this deployment in Utah. And one of the problems though is because it's distributed amongst 8, it's a megawatt cabinet distributed amongst 8 dispensers. So, there's 5 other Teslas plugged in here with me. If you look at the background there, and that meant that I never got more than 188 kilowatts out of the Silverado and not more than 180 out of the Lightning. So essentially the Silverado had the exact same charge curve almost as the Lightning, which was unremarkable. So great video, lots of fun to do. But that is the drawback versus an Alpatronic, right? Which is an all-in-one dedicated cabinet that's going to deliver all of the energy and all of the power dedicated to where it wants to be. But then as a CPO, investment wise, you've got a whole bunch of power sitting there in a cabinet that's not always being used. So, you guys can speak to that probably but much better than anybody about how you're going to deploy those fundings. But then you've got, so what we did then is, Tom Malogny came out from New Jersey and we took a Gravity, and you'll notice it's nighttime because we didn't want to go there in the day and have the same thing happen. And the Gravity is doing, 400 kilowatts potentially, but it's not going to do any good. Again, if you plug in, if you're going to take up 400 plus kilowatts, and the modules, they have a module system in this new V4 cabinet where it used to be very granular before, and you could go down to the kilowatt level. These have modules like Kempower has. And so if you're doing 400 kilowatts, and then you've got 3 other, Model X's that are doing 250 each, when you're done. You know what I mean? You're done. You can't pull anymore. So here you can see that, Tom, we ramped up and we got 419 kilowatts right here in the first 2 minutes pulling that, but then it ramps back down again. So that's what Tesla's relying on. They're relying on, you're only going to pull that 419 for the first 2 minutes, and it's going to level out into the 300s and eventually the 200s. The Teslas all do that too, man. They get their spike. In the case of the Cybertruck, I did a video here at these same chargers with the Cybertruck. It had 500 kilowatts for, 4 seconds. And then after 4 seconds, it falls off a cliff.
About all the time I need. That sounds very familiar for me. So,
if you guys haven't checked these videos out, though, check out, my video and Tom Malogny's video. They are cool videos. Just shows the potential of these cabinets. These megawatt cabinets are rolling out. They are going to expand this from 8 to 16 cabinets and open up 2 of those megawatt cabinets coming up in mid-February, I believe it is. So, but clearly, guys, this is the way it's going, is that, these vehicles are going to be pulling 300 and 400 kilowatts of charging. And so, clearly these things are going next. So you guys were way ahead of the game on this. But how do you, when you're trying to do that calculus? Well, I can have, because Iona is doing the Alpatronic rollout where every cabinet is dedicated 400 kilowatts versus Tesla having a distributed model
and split.
And you guys with the Kempower, it's got to come down to cost and what you're going to do with your investment dollars, right? That's got to be where it is.
The reality is an all-in-one is technically by all standards cheaper because the infrastructure is all in one cabinet, and so it saves cost with deployment. The big issue is, I think the Alpatronic charger is a great charger. I've used them anytime I have a chance on a road trip, and I had to pick between charge point and an Alpatronic, I'm going to pick the Alpatronic unit. The big deal, though, is a 400 kilowatt capable charger. You plug two vehicles in, they're forced to share the same modules. It's not dynamic power. And that's where when you have a power bank distributed to satellites like Tesla and like some others, like what we're doing with Kempower, that allows dynamic sharing of that power to where if you have a megawatt available, you can plug up side by side and both cars get up to 500 kilowatts, whatever the vehicle's capable of. But then as other vehicles and charge curves, they all share that power dynamically to where it's not, even Tesla has been limited in their former models where like one power tower shared between like 6 chargers. I don't know the exact number, but then you're limited on like if too many, there was this Tesla where you can't be close, you're pulling far away, that way you're not pulling off the same power tower. But like true power sharing, I think in their new models and like what we're deploying allows the max capability of the site as a whole to be shared, but no matter where you plug in at. That way it's not like you can't plug side by side and not get the same level of power by spreading the cars out.
So it's very similar. Now our sites are 4 chargers instead of the 8, so we have an advantage there. Now we're using a two-door cabinets, so that only gives us the capability of an 800 kilowatt battery, not power load, not the megawatt power load. Now, what we're probably going to be moving to is the 2 3-door cabinets, and that's 600 kilowatts each. And what that's going to allow us to do is have the capability of 1.2 megawatts. So we're still, I feel like, in the realm, but seeing Tesla move in this direction gives us, you know, because they're great at what they do. They're one of the biggest. They've been here the longest. They know what they're doing. So to see them move in this technology, it means that Josh and I don't have to pivot from what we were doing. And that there you go. We don't have to do that like I've seen some other people do. Now, the Honda system, absolutely. Who's not going to use 200? And if they're never going to have both cars there at one time, that makes financial sense. It spreads out the money better. We looked at those systems, and I even think that we applied in a couple places with that. But that was, you know, for other reasons, we decided to go the direction we've went. And I think they're a great system. I do know they have a megawatt site or a megawatt charger also available in fourth quarter of this year, because I did look at it. It is very similar to what we have, very similar to the V4 cabinets. But again, this is where we're fortunate that Kempower has had this design from day one. This has been their thing. So as we move forward, we hope to have that 1.2 megawatt site, and it splits between 4 people. You know, we've even looked at some of the other systems for a Tesla at our site as well. You have that Tesla commercial program, and we have one trial site that we might end up looking at that for a experiment with a V4 and only 4 cabinets. I don't know if we would do a megawatt for that, because again, is that what's needed for Tesla vehicles if we're also doing our other at the same site? So these are things that we're probably going to work out. I still think that rural areas, which is where we focus on, needs charging. And I think that we are going to have a charging system better than most people. And, you know, we'll see where it goes. We just, you know, now we got to make it happen. And it doesn't help that we're getting ice storms and 50 inches of snow on the job site we have in Kentucky. And, you know, we're about to pour concrete and it's frozen ground. You can't do that. I mean, we're now on the headache, and, you know, we got Georgia sitting there. That'll be our next one with Tennessee. I think Virginia's coming up next as well. I think we're all going to hit about the same time. So we're going to have 21 of these to build very quickly, on top of some other grants we won, on top of getting ready to the next round of North Carolinas and Virginias and some of these other states that are moving forward. So it's going to be an extremely busy time. But I think with Tesla, it shows what we have designed is not going to be obsolete and is not the direction everybody's going in. And I think that's good. I think Iona will probably take over and use that 1 megawatt and distributed system once it comes out, because they are partners of theirs. I think that the all-in-one is perfect for a Walmart or a Buc-ee's when you don't need that extra. But, you know, Iona's a different beast. So I think they'll probably take over with that one system that's similar to what we're using. And, you know, with ours, we can do megawatt trucking at that point. And as long as we design it correctly, you know, all of our sites, except for maybe a couple, you can use buses. If you have one of those school buses or regular bus that needs to charge, you can drive under our canopy. You can charge. We have the room to back up and to move forward to charge. These are little things that we did wanting it because we're EV drivers and wanted to see it happen. So we're building it for Josh and I. If I have a trailer on my truck, if I have a trailer on my Cyber truck or a trailer on my GMC, you'll be able to drive in here, charge, and not have to. Yep, there you go. Good example. So all of this is something that, it's a very similar thing that you've seen in regular gas stations. And the reason all the gas stations look like that is because it works. And I think that is the unique part of us. We're adapting that over because we didn't have to get out in the pouring rain or snow or ice or slip on the ground. So we're doing it with our partners and how we think it needs to be done. And only time will tell if we're correct or not. But with what Tesla's doing and everybody else, it shows that at least our architecture, I think, is the correct architecture. And I know our partners are.
Well, let's do a final pivot before we wrap up to the controversy around around the chaos of autopilot slash auto steer. So as is wont to happen out here in the People's Republic of California, I think this is where the problem started, is different litigation and lawsuits and things out here. And because Tesla doesn't really do press releases, I don't know this for a fact, but there's a lot of speculation around the lawsuits out here, both from individuals and customers and different tragedies that have occurred, and from the government, where they didn't like the name autopilot and what it implied, or what people inferred, which is that the name autopilot, people thought, meant that you could give control to the vehicle and the vehicle was responsible for autopiloting. And so I think it's led to people having some irresponsible behaviors and not paying attention to the vehicle. And so they've done two things now. One, they've changed the name. If you go into your Tesla now, it is called Auto Steer. If you go and try to buy a used Tesla, either on the Tesla website or from anywhere else, and you look at it on the screen, it's now called Auto Steer. But importantly, if you go drive or try to get a new Tesla, it's no longer available at all. There is no more lane centering, and that's a big deal, man. That's a big step. That's always been a standard feature, and it's something that so many cars now, just base level cars, have, is the ability to select your cruise control and keep your distance from the car in front of you and lane center on a trip. And for the majority of people, that's what they want on a trip. And that's not available in a $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 Tesla now. Weird, right? Like, no real talk track from Tesla. There's different people that think that it's tied to Elon's compensation package, which is, he needs 10 million FSD subscribers to get his $1 trillion or part of it. So I don't know. What do we think here, guys? Like, I suppose he could have come up with some base level of FSD. Maybe it seems like there's smart enough people at Tesla to have come up with another solution, and they don't want to support this legacy deal. It's had problems with phantom braking. It's definitely an older software. It's weird because they have data that says people that are using autopilot have less accidents, are safer in the aggregate. So they've removed a safety feature. They've removed a popular feature. And I don't know. What do we think, guys? What's your take?
Only thing I can think of, it's a legal thing that, because why not? Why not leave that in if it makes things safer? But it does put liability, I think, is the only reason I would think they'd have to get rid of it. And I don't see it in anywhere else. I mean, we have Blue Cruise, but we've all been yelled at by our truck multiple times. If we look at the dash to see how fast we're going, and I look at that dash for an extra second, it will say, why are you looking at your dash? So I know, I don't know the system in the Chevy, but I think that when we took it, it did vibrate the seat or something like that a lot. Josh just kept looking off the road just for the fun of it. So I think that it probably is just a legal thing, especially if the new cars don't have it, or it might just be, look, I'm going to force you over to FSD, and that way I can get that subscription model going. It's kind of hard to know exactly. I would love to have Elon on here to talk to him about it, but I think I've been thrown out, so I don't get that opportunity anymore. But I think it's just a legal deal.
Welcome.
Yeah,
Elon, you're welcome on the Turn Down for What podcast.
Tell us what's going on with that. So
yeah, come
right
on.
After Joe Rogan, you're going to come to Turn Down for What? And
yeah.
It'll be an easy transition over here. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I obviously there's been a lot of the Tesla space with more legacy Teslas that have been frustrated by it. I'm not in the Tesla sphere to understand, I guess, the reasons behind it. I mean, I know a lot of the old vehicles, the drivers appreciated it, and I know that the new full self-drive, I mean, they're pushing that for the monthly subscription service, but the reasoning behind it, I mean, that's a solid stab. I mean, Chris, do you have a thought or an inclination behind the move?
I mean, on the surf, it's bizarre, man. I obviously Elon's a smart guy. I just think he's wrong on a lot of this stuff. He said before that these things are appreciating assets, and I don't think they are. I think FSD is a commodity. I think that as NVIDIA improves, I think as Rivian improves, I think I think prices are going to go down on this stuff. He has said very recently, he said, you know, FSD is going to be subscription only. You can't buy it now. And he's basically said the price is going to go up. I think he's dead wrong on that. I think the price is going to absolutely go down. I think that lane centering, cruise control, all that stuff used to be something that you had to pay for as a feature. It was on the most expensive cars, and now you can get the dang thing for free on a Toyota Corolla. It is no different for this stuff. And as competition continues, and you know, Lucid's going to get it, and people are going to laugh in the Tesla community and be like, they're a joke. You know, they can't do anything that FSD can do. Yes, today that is absolutely true. They are not in the same hemisphere as what Tesla is doing with FSD. Not even close. They're not even close compared to hardware 3, much less what's going on with hardware 4, much less with what's going to be coming with unsupervised and hardware 5 and all that stuff, right? Yeah, they're not even in the realm of what Tesla is accomplishing, but they will be. And it's only a matter of time with this stuff. There are smart engineers working on it. And so it's one of those weird things where we're just talking about base level lane centering, cruise control. And Kyle Connor at Out of Spec has a great video on it where he talks about, and this is a big part of when my wife experienced FSD. And I did a video with some coworkers where we went to lunch, and man, we were ripping through neighborhoods allegedly while in Mexico. We're going through, 35 mile an hour, 45 mile an hour neighborhood not school zones, sorry, speed limit zones, and clearly going over the speed limit, guys. Like we
flying through school zones. Chris, tell us more.
yeah, definitely not flying through school zones. Let me be clear. I joke about Mexico, but we were not going through a school zone. But we fly over railroad tracks. There were some incredible moments on FSD where it was not driving the way it should have driven, and you can't control your speed, even on the highway. And if you want to, and Kyle has a great line, and he says, there are parts of the country where the saying is, at 9 you're fine, and at 10 you're mine. And the police will be like, hey, if you're 9 over the speed limit, I'm leaving you alone. But the moment you hit 10 over, you're mine. And you have zero control over that in FSD. And it likes to change lanes whenever it wants to change lanes. And it's there is something in some ways better about Autopilot in that respect. And now look, if they want to, I hope they do come out with FSD and give you a setting that, like, I want to choose. I don't like this with Blue Cruise, by the way. If you've driven the new Mustang Mach-E with 1.5 Blue Cruise, where it chooses when it lane changes, I much prefer when I, in 1.4 Blue Cruise, change lanes myself. I want to determine when I change lanes. So I very much appreciate that. So yeah, FSD needs to be I need to be able to set a speed limit that I want. I need to be able to select when I change lanes. Or for those that don't want to, they can turn over that control to FSD, but that needs to be a setting. And to me, there needs to be a very basic level of FSD, which is clearly superior to autopilot, that people either get complimentary with their Tesla for highway only, supervised, or maybe they pay such a pittance. Maybe it's included with their, data subscription or something like that, right? I don't know. Some kind of package. It's, $25 a month, something ridiculously small. But something, right? They have smart enough engineers. They could have figured this out, and they didn't appear to put any effort into it. Hopefully they will in the future. But these cars are already $50,000, $60,000. And I brought this up in my EVs are not affordable video that they only tuned into to watch the Donut Labs part. But if they had watched the previous part, Donut Labs,
Donut Lab.
hashtag algorithm Donut Labs, tune in for more.
Hashtag Donut Labs.
But yeah, I do a part where I go and I'm literally in front of the Tesla factory and I'm like, hey, these guys are the leader in autonomy. However, their vehicles are $50,000, $60,000. Now, if you add FSD on top of that, these are not affordable EVs, guys. They're not. These are upper middle class income electric vehicles. And now, for the people that are stretching and leasing and trying to get their first EV, to add $100 on top of that, and Elon to imply that price is going to go higher for something that used to be available as something, again, that you can just get on your base level Corolla. I don't know, man.
We've always got things for free out of a vehicle, and the subscription in the automotive space is growing. Ask BMW and these other companies about seat warmers or whatever. You're always,
yep.
and they are. Tesla is a publicly traded company, so you are also going to have shareholders and large investors are like, hey, I like to have a little bit more return on my dollar. I don't think this as much as, hey, it's costing us more, so we're going to pass that number along to you, as much as it is, hey, the price of a Tesla has went down 10,000 or 15,000, so we got to make up that margin. Might as well do this to get that back. Or we are about to build a much better software edge compute system, which is something I always love to talk about. And we got to get revenue in so I can build that out so we can have the next generation. It might be something where they are looking at 5 or 10 years down the road of communications between all of this. And how are we going to pay for that communication to ensure that the next generation is there? That's just how my mind thinks. But nobody has said that. Now, it would be better if somebody came out and said, hey, it's going to cost us $10 billion to build the network that's needed for when we go really full self-driving for everybody. This is going to pay for that because it's part of the software that was needed. I don't really know the basis behind it other than, hey, are you trying to move everybody over to FSD? And then you're trying to say, hey, we're not going to look at the affordable. I think he's scrapped a lot of the affordable. I think he's now a mid-tier, and we're not going to see an affordable push on anything. Even the cyber cab, why would you build that if you could put that same effort into cyber cab and take over that industry? So I just don't think that the affordable and it is a higher, more luxury item. To your point, nobody has FSD. Until you do, you're stuck. And that might not be a bad thing if it works really well and that's the only thing you can do and you're killing everything else just to push people that way until Rivian has something. But to get to even the system that Tesla has is what? You're 5 years, 6 years that it took to develop it to the point to where it was like, hey, this is like better than everybody else's. So even with LiDAR, I don't see Rivian doing it that much quicker. But to your point, you always stand on the shoulders of giants. And there's a lot of people you can hire that have done this for that other company. And their value is higher because now they know how to do it. And they're going to go where that money is, because I would in that situation too. If I created something and my knowledge base is that, and now I've got LiDAR, which does add another layer of data that can calculate and can estimate and then can use predictive algorithms to determine how safe. All of a sudden and I was expecting that from GM. I was expecting that from Ford, because that's their true value of Tesla. They are not a car manufacturer. They're a technology company, and that technology is so valuable. And I think that's the difference, though. Nobody else is looking at it that way. And Ford's investments, I don't see going in that direction. They're cutting where they can. They've got rid of people that they invested in order to build those ecosystems for this. I don't know much about General Motors, except that they have a better system. When we tried it, when Josh and I used Super Cruise, it was objectively a much better program than our Blue Cruise at that time. Don't know about the new ones, haven't tested the new ones, but that truck, it was able to change lanes automatically. It didn't put us in any risk. It trucked down the road. It was a good system. And I've heard from a lot of people that that's a great system. So until somebody else can come up with anything else, it's a premium product. No different than everything else. So I don't like being, nickeled and dimed, but it looks like everybody's doing it. And my Blue Cruise is going to run out soon, and I'm not going to buy it again. So I will be constantly paying for it. And I should be able to just use it to lane center, because it would pinball even at that with mine, So, it ain't like it's unheard of.
You'll be able to still do your lane centering for free. I don't begrudge them doing the subscription on FSD, because it's truly a spectacular offering. I just think there's this huge gap now between $99 for FSD and now I can't lane center at all.
Yeah.
And that's just such a huge gap. So I hope they come up with something to bridge that. I think that's just where the kind of shock is,
How much is it? $100 subscription? Is that how much it is a month?
Yeah. And so when you're thinking about folks that are out there and they're making a payment of $400 or $500 a month, and now you add $100 onto it, that's substantial. It's not insignificant.
It isn't, but I will also say that as I get older, I'm going to like to have that independence to be able to say I can get to the doctor's office or I can drive home at nighttime because I can't see very well right now. And that's when you start looking at how much it costs to have people come over and help, and the labor cost, it might be that is the audience. But to your point, you don't want stuff to constantly go up, and it's still an expensive car to begin with. If it's a $30,000 car and it offered this, that's a different situation. But it's not. It's cheapest is what? That would include this 45, 50. I have no clue.
Yeah. So 40,000 for the standard, I guess. And which, I guess we should have seen this coming, because when they launched the Cybertruck never had autopilot, auto steer, and the standard Model Y and Model 3 never had it. So they've kind of dropped nuggets. This was going to be kind of the direction they were going. And again, to your point, yeah, absolutely. If you're getting up in age and the FSD makes sense, then the subscription makes sense. I'm 100% on board with that. I think it is when you look at the hundreds of thousands of Model 3s and Model Ys that are sold, especially the Model Y, the number one selling, so many of those customers are first-time EV owners. They're the ones that are the nurses, and they are the ones that are the office workers, and they are the ones that are heading down to Southern California for the weekend, or up to Tahoe, or up to Sacramento, and they're going on the long road trips, and they are absolutely safer with autopilot down the freeway than without it. And they are not necessarily in a place in life yet where they're able to do that extra $99 a month. And maybe they just do it for that month, I guess. But so many won't. So many, maybe they're single moms, maybe they're whatever they are, right? And
$6,000's a lot. You take a 5-year ownership. That's $6,000 you're adding into a 5-year ownership. That's a pretty good chunk of cash when you got a $40,000 vehicle and you're spending an extra $6,000 on just to be able to drive.
So it's just a disappointing turn for a company that's supposed to be about safety and has always been, and is supposed to be about moving, or until recently when it was about awesome abundance, whatever in the God's name that's supposed to be, which as opposed to sustainable transportation, which was a clear, definable goal, worthy that you could define and measure. And now it's awesome. What's awesome? Abundance. It's frustrating to have this be where we are personally. And there's a lot of folks online that'll make excuses for it, and I've even seen some things that I find I don't want to use the wrong word here. I think there are some very well-to-do people that have done well in life for themselves, and congratulations to them. And they're loyal Tesla people, and I respect it, because they were there when times were bad, and they put their money in early, and they believed it when this company may not have made it. And I very much respect it, because in the same way that I respect the two of you guys for believing what you believed in, you've made it through hard politics, hard moments, and you're about to open up an amazing
Gosh.
you know what I mean, though? People don't see, right? When we flash forward here in a couple years and you have multiple charge point stations across the southeast, and someone's gonna take for
Kempower,
granted,
not charge point.
I
I understand what you're saying, but
charge point operators,
just
right?
to be clear.
So someone's not going to know what it was like when a bunch of stuff was canceled and a bunch of other operators didn't make it through this, and you weren't sure where legislation was going to go, right?
Well, it was
when you
tough.
were hoping to get
Still
funding,
is.
you know what I'm saying? They don't, when you had frozen ground and you weren't sure, all right, nobody was there for that.
But I'm
And
not
so
going to be making decisions because now that I have, let's say we do make it, to your point, you still got to think, am I going to charge 10 cents more per kilowatt because I can in that area, or because Pilot or whoever down the road is charging 60 cents? No. The whole thing for us in that deal would be trying to keep that 39 to 45 cents per kilowatt. Or how can I lower our cost to power in to make it more cost effective? That's what we're doing. And I think that for your part, it's, yeah, those people are great. They've made a lot of money, but they should also be caring about that nurse or that teacher that's still doing this. And they're taking away a safety and a item that makes that car a better entry level car for them, so they can make more money on the end. And it's not worth that to sacrifice out of the whole deal, if I'm getting what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tesla's always been about that, right? They've always been about the lowest price charging. Even their chargers have never been the best chargers out there. They've been the most economical, the easiest to deploy, the most numerous. They've always been available, not long waits. Nobody can say that the thermals or that the charge speeds or anything like that were the best on Teslas. They were well maintained. They were dependable. They were available. They were right off the freeway.
Yeah.
Their vehicles were not always the best panel gaps. They weren't always the best built, but overall in the aggregate, they were about moving the movement forward and making affordable, available, reliable, really good tech, really good software. And here
And
the software is going the safest vehicle, right?
The safest vehicle. If I could pick any vehicle to put my kids in, it would be a Model Y, because that is the safest car in Europe. That's the safest car in the United States. The less likely to flip over. The most opportune to get out of in a major crash. The ones that have, they are the safest, and those are the things you focus on. I don't care about the panel gap if I can walk out of a crash.
That's what I put my wife in, right? First EV car. I go and I put my wife in a Model Y. And so look, that's all, right? That's I think where I get to the thing. It's like, hey, now you've objectively made your car have less feature rich availability. You've made it less valuable, and you've made it less safe. And that's just a first for me when it comes to Tesla. And so, easy for someone who is maybe more well-to-do, who isn't it like, I work for FedEx. She's a school teacher. Good for you if you're in a position where you're above that, but don't look down on me for wishing I had an autopilot, and a little bit more value. That's and there's been even people that have said, well, if you're buying a Tesla and you can't afford that extra $99, maybe you shouldn't be buying a Tesla. And I'm just like, I don't know that that's the right mindset, man. I just can't buy into that. So I'm not on board with that. So I hope they change their mind. Tesla often does. Usually they make the better decision. Normally the correct thing is eventually done. I hope that's what happens here. So we'll see. You know what I mean? We'll see what happens. I don't think the price is going to go up. I think it will eventually go down, either through competition or realization that the subscriptions don't increase. The market will be what the market is. We've seen this with Cybertruck and with Lightning. It will be this with FSD as well. The subscriptions are not going to go up because of this. So the price
wait until Rivian hits. I mean, and honestly, this helps Rivian, because the more theirs goes up and they could come into the market, now all of a sudden there is another alternative. I keep looking at Rivian more and more as the winner of all of this going on. The truck side of it, Ford backing out, Rivian is a winner. I've looked at Rivians where I wouldn't have looked at them before. Here recently, I was like, hey, when I get my next, what do they offer? And I was looking at the extended range. Hey, that's 400 miles. Hey, it does this. Yeah, it's a little smaller. I don't like that, but I can get it with full self-driving potentially. Here's the other things I can do with it. Hey, it's made, here. So for the first time, that is an option for me that I never would have considered before, because my Ford is not going to be made anymore. And, you know, I don't know what General Motors is going to do. I know that the Cybertruck just hasn't really kept up the way I thought it would. So really the winner out of all of this, I see as long as Rivian keeps doing what they're doing right now. You got the van, you know, Bright Drop's gone, but I see Rivian vans now with Amazon and a lot of places. You know, are you all looking at Rivian vans? Can you even say, because you mentioned the Sprinters, a Rivian van, I know they're expensive, but is that something that you could even consider?
It's a tough thing from a branding perspective because they are so tied to Amazon.
Yeah.
So the conversation I had a couple months ago, it was a non-starter. And so we recently signed some agreements with Bollinger to get about 50 of theirs, and Harbinger to get, I think, 70 of theirs, but those are box trucks. And then we were looking at the Sprinters from Mercedes. There really isn't anything in that category for Bright Drop, and we've bought thousands of Bright Drops.
Bright Drop had a great vehicle. I hate that one. It's a great vehicle. I really do hate that what happened. And then I also look at somebody like you and, you know, your company, as well as the Brown company down in Georgia, and think, man, there's enough vehicles there. Would it be worth to come up with a joint venture, kind of like what Ford and Chevy did with the 10-speed transmission many years ago? Share the development cost to develop it, and then share the value of it there for that. Would it be something, because you got all these battery plants now that are kind of open, you have drivetrains that are available. How hard would it be to take a similar vehicles on both, but then customize and then cooperate to build something? And I know if it doesn't go to the public, it's a different situation, but I keep thinking, what would that look like? And then could it compete against the Amazons?
Yeah, but FedEx kind of stays in their lane. They do what they do, and someone else has to kind of come up with the product. I am curious to see what appears at ACT Expo. The meeting yesterday actually was our EV monthly meeting, and for the first time, the door was not completely shut on the Rivian conversation, but everything would have to be, it would just have to be right. All the incentives would have to be right. It would have to make sense. But it was the first time the Rivian word was said and not immediately shut. And I think with any of these big corporations, and I'll be as careful as I can with how I say it. Money motivates everything, right? If you have the right motivation, and as a worldwide corporation, not all things are motivated from the United States. So at some point, you know, you were just in Europe, and Europe is still very motivated by a lot of the green initiatives, and we have a lot of very high-end customers that use our shipping internationally, and especially in areas like medical and pharmaceuticals that are billion-dollar customers. And there are commitments that we have made globally that with certain dates in mind. And the only way to reach these goals is to, you know, continue our commitments. And for those commitments to be made, we do have to have certain amounts of vehicles on the road that are not having emissions. And so at some point, to have it pencil out, to have the math make sense, you know, you may have to look at a Rivian or something if nobody else is making vehicles. That's probably not their first, second, or third choice. But if companies, you know, we've used Exos for a long time for a lot of our,
close to us too. Yeah.
Right. But Exos has had some recent struggles. You haven't really heard a lot from Exos. So if some of these companies can't have sustainable vehicles, if an Exos starts to pull back, if a Bright Drop starts to disappear, if Rivian starts to be the name and that's what you have to go with, then you start to brand be damned. You know what I mean? You drive the same van that Amazon drives, if that's what you have to do, because at the end of the day, you know, you want that
European business. Yeah, that's one thing that I don't think I've ever thought of, and I don't think even our listeners know. It's not, hey, we have to do it for our policy. If you got billion-dollar contracts out in Europe, they know they can force you, because they are giving you that revenue, to say, look, we want to have your views at least this. We're going to give you this. And honestly, there's not one shipping company. There's multiples. So if you don't, they'll pick somebody else, and that company 100%. Will do it. And now you've lost that billions of dollars of revenue, something that I never would have thought of in the grand scheme of things. A very unique way of looking at it.
They're looking at global emissions. And when we give our reports,
Except for China.
Except for China. Yeah, nobody's looking at China. So yeah, those things are interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to ACT Expo for a number of reasons. I'm looking forward to seeing, what's there, if there's anything innovative or new, and looking, at what people are talking about. Looking forward to talking about, Rivian, RJ, and we talked offline about RJ. RJ is going to be that keynote speaker. That's a first. That's you don't normally think about Rivian in that space. They've been there at ACT Expo. And if you remember last time, we couldn't have gone more than 100 yards without seeing another bright drop, right?
Yep.
I'm curious to see if we see Rivian be aggressive in that space, because someone's got to fill it, to your point. And I think that would also help it too, right? If suddenly you saw Rivian start to appear in more places other than Amazon, I think it would be easier, more palatable.
Yeah.
If you started to see them pop up in other places.
I just think
would
they're too
be
expensive for most people, though. That's the problem.
That Amazon partnership, though, has ballooned. I mean, they're hitting, like,
Here.
they were never in our region. They were always in North Carolina and Nashville, but now the Amazon deliveries to my house is an Amazon Rivian van, which is cool to see that pull up every day.
Well, the big thing is there's a feeding program that is local that my wife is part of for her organization that she works with. And I've been talking with them about the bright drops, and they got a small grant, and then they have monies to replace an F-350 or an F-650. So, the bright drop was perfect, but the money just isn't there for two of them under $100,000. And I can't get a Rivian, even the smaller Rivians, for under 200,000 or under 100,000 for two of them. And that's kind of where, until you hit that or that 60,000 each mark, I don't think that that's going to really be seen for plumbers and everybody else. But that's, we'll get into that another time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode. Josh, if you want to take us home, we've pivoted and we've donutted and we've megawatted.
Yeah, we've covered all the bases, but yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff going on. I mean, we're continuing to see globally what's taking place, and huge congrats to Kempower for obviously helping that side. It's a big deal for them, promoting that technology. We got to lay our hands on the megawatt charger in Raleigh. They have, there to see, and I got to be there and touch that, but an actual real life deployment of it in Sweden was a unique thing to see. At least Jessie got to see. But that's something that, is a big deal and a big first step in the door, obviously, for what Kempower is doing across Europe and what we hope to help them do in the United States as time and technology progresses. But yeah, we'll continue onwards to report. We have a couple juicy episodes hopefully coming up for you guys in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. We have hopefully consistency coming with some episodes in the next couple of weeks, and we'll bring those to you as we get them. So thank you for enduring with us for this episode, and we will continue onwards with more EV news and updates.
Wow, he just keeps on, ain't he? He just
I always keep on. That's keep on keeping on. But
there you go.
That's all for today. Tune in next week. Adios.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.